Welcome to the latest Seahawks Draft Log live stream. Solo stream tonight. Just wanted to give a few thoughts on what has been a pretty eventful last 48 hours or so with the Seahawks as they head over to Santa Clara for the Super Bowl. Send your super chats in. They're all much appreciated. If you have any questions, any thoughts, I will put them up on the screen. If you send a super chat in, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for everything that we're doing on Super Bowl week. You will not miss a thing. I am heading over to Santa Clara on Friday. We'll be at the Super Bowl on Sunday. Cannot wait. So excited. Can't believe time is just dragging along. Since I discovered that I was going to be going to Santa Clara, and Friday feels like 6 months away, frankly, but I'm sure it'll come around quite quickly, and I'll be driving down to London and getting on that 11-hour flight and heading over to San Francisco airport. So very much looking forward to that. So send your super chats in and give me your thoughts on everything that we're going to talk about here. So the topics that I want to talk about and to give some opinions on are really the Klint Kubiak situation with the Raiders, and also the story that has emerged in the last few days about ownership likely changing after the Super Bowl. I will also give a few thoughts on the game, some early thoughts on the game as well. Start with Klint Kubiak. It has emerged that he is going to be the next Raiders coach. We've as near enough got that confirmation now. It's any hope of like a Josh McDaniels style U-turn, I think, are completely steeped in unrealism, and he is going to be the next Raiders head coach. I think it makes complete sense, and I have sort of seen people second guessing whether this is the right move, people suggesting that he's making a mistake. I could not disagree more with those opinions. First of all, you've got to put yourself in the shoes of Klint Kubiak. He is not going to be going into these meetings thinking, do you know what? The Raiders have notoriously been a challenge. A number of coaches have failed. You could do that about a whole bunch of teams in the NFL and you will never get a top job. Like, it's very rare that a job like, for example, the Ravens comes open or the Bills. And Klint Kubiak didn't get those jobs this year. They didn't wait for him. And they're not going to be open next year either. So this idea that a great job is just around the corner, that like a contender with great ownership and a fantastic GM is just going to be waiting around the corner for Klint Kubiak in 12 months' time, it just isn't realistic. The other thing you've got to remember here is Klint Kubiak's played his leverage pretty well. Like, he had 2 interviews over the weekend with the Raiders and the Cardinals, and he positioned himself that he was the main candidate for both, which is great leverage when you are in contract negotiations. Plus, because the Raiders and the Cardinals were at the end, because the head coaching pool had thinned, he was in a position to say, I'm very comfortable staying in Seattle. What are you going to pay me to come and coach your football team? I imagine that he's a very wealthy man. So his salary, I would guess, based on what Kellen Moore was earning as a top offensive coordinator contract in 2024, that was $2.5 million. So I would suggest that he's in that kind of a range, if not lower, because there was not a huge demand for him a year ago. He could be earning $15 million a year with the Raiders. He could be earning more than that with the Raiders. Contracts are upwards towards $20 million now. This is the franchise that was prepared to pay Chip Kelly $6 million a year and completely reset the market for offensive coordinators 12 months ago. They are not going to be paying Klint Kubiak a modest salary. He is going to be a very, very wealthy man. If you turn that down and you do not get offers in 12 months' time, because let's say there's a Super Bowl hangover, win or lose this weekend. Let's say that your quarterback gets injured and you can't handle Drew Lock as well as you could Sam Darnold. Let's just say that you have a great deal of bad luck next year with injuries or whatever, or in game situations. Your stock can fall very, very quickly. Cliff Kingsbury, offensive coordinator for Jaden Daniels' first season in the NFL. Fantastic, on cloud 9. They get to the NFC Championship game. A year later, Daniels can't stay healthy. The Commanders have a horrible losing record. They don't get anywhere near the playoffs, and Cliff Kingsbury's fired, and right now he can't get another job in the NFL. Things change very, very quickly. You have to live in the here and now. If he turned down this offer, which I imagine is extremely well paid, he could have potentially cost himself tens of millions of dollars a year. Let's just say, for example, that it is $15 million a year. That's over a 5-year contract. It's an obscene amount of money. $60 million. If you see that contract through, it's 60. If he works for 2 years and gets 30 million and then gets fined and gets another year's, that's $45 million versus what over that period? Less than 10? If he stays as an offensive coordinator, it absolutely makes sense to go and take this job on a personal financial level. And we need to remember that these coaches are still human beings. Like this idea that you can just constantly wait for the most ideal opportunity and you don't go anywhere until that comes is not realistic. And for the people saying that Ben Johnson did exactly that, I think there's a bit of revisionist history going on here. It was reported by Mike Garofalo and also Albert Breer that his interview with the Commanders did not go well. And he announced afterwards that he was going to be staying with the Detroit Lions. The feeling was that he was not going to get the Commanders job anyway immediately after that interview. And if the Seahawks had made a similar determination there, then it made sense for him to say, actually, I've decided to stay with the Detroit Lions for another year and go with that PR win as opposed to being snubbed, which is what happened. And then a year later, obviously, his stock was even higher than it was the year prior. The Lions won 15 games in the regular season. They did not lose in the playoffs because of Ben Johnson's offense, and he was able to parlay that into a couple of really big, interested teams, big offers from the Raiders, funnily enough, and then he went to the Bears instead and is earning an awful lot of money. So it's not true that Ben Johnson was like, no, I'm going to wait for the perfect opportunity, and a year later it was there. That's not what happened there. So Kubiak, he had to take this job. And then there are some other things you've got to think about here. Working with Tom Brady, I've seen some people say, do you want to work with him looking over your shoulder over the time? I don't think he's going to look at it that way at all. I think he's going to think this is great. That the boss, the person who is going to be making the big decisions, understands football and is a bit of a football psycho. I imagine, as we're going to come on to it a little bit, like Clint Kubiak. He seems completely dedicated to his craft. The thing you've got to remember here, his dad, Gary Kubiak, won a Super Bowl with John Elway as GM. If he rings his dad and says, hey, Dad, how was it working with a legendary Hall of Fame Super Bowl winning quarterback as your boss? I imagine Gary Kubiak will say, it was pretty good. We had a lot of success together. It's nothing to be afraid of. So he's perfectly placed to take on this opportunity of working with Tom Brady. Plus the GM, John Spytek, has a relationship with the Kubiaks from his time in Denver as well. So all of the things there paint a very clear picture as to why Klint Kubiak would take this job. You've then got $90 million approximately in free cap space. You will be able to create more when you trade Max Crosby and you get rid of Geno Smith, which will happen. And there, I imagine they're going to spend a lot of money on the staff. If they're prepared to spend $6 million on Chip Kelly a year ago, I imagine they're going to spend a lot of money putting together a great staff, with a good defensive coordinator, good offensive staff there for Klint Kubiak in Vegas. So it makes perfect sense for him to go. And wish him well. I think it's a huge blow for the Seahawks. And that's why I want to talk about the Seahawks now. Because I've seen a lot of people saying, I'm not worried about this. I trust Mike McDonald. I trust John Schneider. I just want to focus on the Super Bowl. And I completely respect all of those opinions. I think that's fine. But I would encourage those people who are saying that not to tell the rest of us that we shouldn't be talking about it, can't talk about it, or that we're being negative for talking about it. If the Seahawks are not in the Super Bowl right now, and they'd lost last week to the Rams and Kubiak was going, this would be the only topic in town. How on earth do you replace this guy? And I think we should talk about it now. We're going to have plenty of time to talk about the game in the week. You know, we're all looking forward to the Super Bowl, really are looking forward to that. But the goal of the Seahawks is not to have one great season and then regress and then not get back to this level again. The aim has to be to build on this, whatever happens on Sunday, to continue to be a strong team. Like the Rams have been and the Niners have been, in fairness. The Niners are a bit more up and down. The Rams are a bit more consistent in that. We want to get to more NFC Championship games in the future, potentially more Super Bowls as well. That's my aim anyway. I'm sure it is for a lot of you as well. The reason the Seahawks are in the Super Bowl this week is because they're completely balanced across their roster. They have good offense, good defense, good special teams. If you take the offense away, because last season they had a good defense, special teams not as good as this year, but still not horrendous from memory. If you take away the offense and it regresses back to even like half of what it was the year before, and in terms of how bad it was, I don't think you get into the Super Bowl anymore. I don't think you're necessarily beating the Rams. You only beat the Rams because of your offense. Twice, you only beat them because of your offense. So the offense has to retain a certain standard if you want to continue to be really good. At the moment, they have the brilliance of Mike McDonald and someone who is Shanahan-esque as a play caller on offense. That's a perfect mix. It's a perfect mix. If you lose the offensive coordinator, it's a big hole to fill. And filling it is going to be very, very difficult. Because at the minute, there's nobody really who stands out from that same coaching philosophy who's an outside external candidate. Are you going to completely change your blocking system after 1 year of it actually starting to work and actually having an identity of what you want to be on offense? You're going to change that up and go for something completely different? What's going to happen to the player, the quarterback, if he has somebody who's not from this system? Remember, he was coached by Klint Kubiak in San Francisco. He went to a very similar offense in Minnesota. Now he's worked for Kubiak in Seattle. If you go for something completely different, how does that impact Sam Darnold? How does it impact the offensive line that have done a decent job this year? What about Jackson Smith and Jigba, who had a breakthrough season with Kubiak as his offensive coordinator? It's going to be a challenge. And then you think about the staff who may well leave with Klint Kubiak. Now, this is something I really did want to talk about because I think there needs to be some clarity. Someone in a greater position of authority than I needs to talk about this so that I think this can become the conventional wisdom that something else has become. I think people kind of have this idea that coaches can just make lateral moves across the board. John Benson cannot leave Seattle if he's under contract to be the offensive line coach for the Raiders unless he gets promoted and offensive coordinator. I don't even know if they can just create like an assistant head coach role or something like that. I'm not sure if that's possible. It's not clear. But he can't just leave and become the offensive coordinator for the Raiders. That'd be a lateral move. The only way it happens is if, like I say, he gets promoted or he's on a 1-year deal. If his contract expires after this next game, you can't stop him leaving. And that's possible. Of a man of his age, and knowing there's a chance that Klint Kubiak might get a head coaching job, I would imagine that some of these coaches have only signed 1-year deals and you might not be able to prevent them from moving on. But if they are under contract, you can block it. And that counts for any kind of lateral move. Like there's this thinking that, I don't know when it sort of happened, that, and I've fallen into this trap myself at times, this idea that if you don't call plays as an offensive or defensive-minded coordinator, that you can just be poached by another team because it's a promotion to go and call plays. There's nothing to suggest that is the case. We have had evidence this offseason of teams blocking their coordinators from lateral moves. The Cowboys did not allow their non-play calling offensive coordinator to interview for the same job in Philadelphia, even though that would have included play calling duties, because it was a lateral move. They blocked it. Now, I know that the Ravens have appointed the Bears offensive coordinator who didn't call plays in Chicago. That's because the Bears allowed him to do it. Now, there are some teams out there that will say, we are not going to stand in your way. We want people to know that if they come to the Seahawks, for example, they will get their chance to progress their career if they have an offer to move to a same role at a different team with a bit more responsibility if you feel that's the best thing for your career. There are definitely teams who will feel that way. Clearly, that's how Ben Johnson feels about his 29-year-old offensive coordinator. He has gone to be the offensive coordinator for the Ravens now, and they've agreed to do that. But it's on the team's discretion. Kyle Shanahan said he would not allow Klint Kubiak, for example, to go and speak to other teams. And from the Seahawks' point of view, if these coaches, Andrew Janocko, John Benton, Justin Houghton, people like that, if they are being offered the same job in Las Vegas under Kubiak, the Seahawks, if those coaches are under contract, will have the chance to block them. If they're not under contract, they can't do anything. If they're promoted, they can't do anything. So it's going to be interesting to see who actually goes with Kubiak, but it's not a given that everyone's going to be able to go. If some of these coaches are under contract, then they're kind of stuck unless the Seahawks want to do them a solid. And I do think one thing that might sway the Seahawks on this is there are not a lot of options available now in the coaching market. So it might be one thing to go and replace, say, John Benton if he's out of contract and he goes with Kubiak. It might be simple enough to find an offensive line coach from somewhere who can do the job. What you probably can't do is, hey, let's find a quarterback coach, an offensive line coach, a run game coordinator, a passing game coordinator, quarterback, all of these things. I think if they have the opportunity to block some of these coaches, they're going to go, look, it's just we'd love to help, but we just can't afford to let you go because the pool is extremely thin. We need you to stay. And in some cases, coaches will stay as a point of order for the Seahawks, just needing to have an actual staff. They can't let everybody go and join Kubiak and the Raiders, unless, of course, like I said, they're out of contract and they can all follow him. So that's something to keep an eye on. That also stands for the Seahawks as they try to replace Klint Kubiak. If they want to hire Yadinsky, Grant Yadinsky, the offensive coordinator for the Jaguars, who doesn't call plays, he would need to get permission from the Jaguars to interview for this job. I have no idea whether the Jaguars would allow him to do that, especially after he went for head coaching jobs, committed to stay with the team. I would imagine that if he sticks around for another year and Trevor Lawrence continues the way he finished this season, then Grant Yadinsky is not for long in Jacksonville anyway, and he will get a head coaching job. But if he wants to come and call the plays and run the offense himself, he may turn to the Jaguars and say, will you please let me go and do an interview there? And we'll see how that one goes. Of course, they interviewed him last year. The Seahawks may or may not actually even want him to come and be the offensive coordinator, since they gave the job to Klint Kubiak last year. But if they did, they could put a request in there, and then it's up to the Jaguars to accept it or to turn it down. But they can't say, you do not call plays in Jacksonville, come and have an interview with us. They would need the Jaguars' permission to do that. Some of the other names that have been linked, Arthur Smith, I don't think it was a coincidence that Ohio State put out a tweet on Sunday saying, we'd like to welcome Arthur Smith as the offensive coordinator, because I suspect that he has agreed to do that job, perhaps sort of feeling like he needs to take a job, or financially he's the heir to FedEx. So he doesn't need a job, but he wants a job and doesn't want to be left doing nothing this year. So has taken the Ohio State job. I think they are perhaps a little concerned that he's going to end up with Seattle, because the original plan reportedly with Mike Macdonald was to pair with Arthur Smith when he was coming to Seattle. Arthur Smith couldn't wait until the AFC Championship game defeat for the Ravens, so he took the job of the Steelers instead. That was the idea. Now, if he has signed with Ohio State or agreed to Ohio State, there will be a buyout in that contract. There may even be some sort of tentative agreement that if an NFL team comes in, they won't stand in his way. But by putting the tweet out, it does just make it a little bit harder to walk away now. Like, everybody's like, Arthur Smith, great. Albert Breer, an Ohio State alum. Oh, brilliant appointment. Fantastic news. All the Ohio State people are now talking about that hire. And it makes it very difficult for Arthur Smith to walk away from the job when everybody's saying how great it is that he's there. If he was to walk away in a couple of weeks, not a great look. So they're probably just applying a bit of pressure there. But I wouldn't rule him out completely, and that would get a mixed reception. Hank Fraley, to me, just seems too schematically different. I know they interviewed him last year. It would have been an interesting appointment, but they do not run an outside zone system in Detroit. And I think sort of blowing everything up for a first-time play caller who's never called plays before. By all accounts, sounds like a very good offensive line coach, not somebody who's called plays. I'm just not sure about going back down that road. Cliff Kingsbury's too shotgun orientated. I don't see him getting the opportunity in Seattle. If he wasn't so hell-bent on this spread system, then I think he would be interesting as someone who's called plays, who's been a head coach, who has had success at times at two different teams. He's gone with the Arizona Cardinals to the playoffs. He has helped an offense with a rookie quarterback get to the playoffs as well, get to the NFC Championship game in the past. He would have been interesting, but he's so committed to his system that I just don't see him being a fit for what Mike Macdonald wants to do, which is to run the football and be physical. I don't think anybody's going to hire Greg Roman as an offensive coordinator. I think his goose is cooked, quite frankly. So Mike Kafka, maybe. They've shown a bit of interest there in the past. I'm not sure the Lions would stand in his way, nor would I be sure that he would necessarily want to stay in a job with Detroit that is essentially like a senior offensive assistant type thing. I think he would be sort of, of course, I'll go with the offensive coordinator in Seattle instead. I think he would be interested in that. But there's nobody jumps off the page. There's no Mike McDaniel there. There's no Klint Kubiak there. There's nobody who you just go, yes, Now, they may do some out-of-the-box interviews because they did a year ago. Not many people say, hey, Hank Fraley and Grant Yadinsky. And they interviewed him. And they interviewed a few others as well. There was the names passed me by. There was a run game coordinator with the Baltimore Ravens they interviewed as well. So there's some other people they could go and interview. It could be somebody that we're not talking about easily. Part of me kind of would be intrigued if that's what they went for, because that would be somebody who Mike Macdonald has gone, this is the person I want, rather than this is the person I'm settling for. I think that would be interesting if they did do it outside of the box, but it's just too hard to know. Internal candidates seem to be the fans' preference, but I'd just be careful with that. Look what happened with the Eagles. They were in a very similar situation a year ago. Kellen Moore departs. They hire Nick Sirianni's BFF, who was already on the staff, to be the offensive coordinator. It was a total disaster. He has been fired after 1 year. I don't think you should automatically just hope that internal candidate equals consistency equals carry on the way that you've been. We need somebody on this team who can call plays at a high level. Again, the Seahawks are not in the Super Bowl without somebody who can call a game like Klint Kubiak called a game against the Rams. The Seahawks have just outgunned Matt Stafford and Sean McVay. That's how they won that game. It was not the defense giving up 500 yards and some bonehead decisions from cornerbacks and terrible missed coverages to let them score immediately afterwards. It was because of the offense. If you want to carry on being good, you need a good offensive coordinator. So I think it's a huge topic. It's a topic that you can't just wave it away. You have to talk about it. Even if ideally we'd just be talking about Super Bowl, Super Bowl, Super Bowl all week, you can't. Like, the future of this team is still important. And looking ahead, they've got to get this appointment right. And I don't know who it's going to be. It's going to be fascinating couple of weeks afterwards. They'll have to move quickly. They have to move quickly. And I have to say, look, this is the kind of thing, like I've just said, people still say it. I've just seen this comment. I'm not picking on Keith, you in particular, but does Clay call the plays in San Francisco? Go and get him. It doesn't matter whether he calls plays or not. The San Francisco 49ers can block that move. They do not have to let him go and interview for the Seahawks just because he doesn't call the plays. So I would just be careful of that. And people saying, what about Nate Shieldhouse from the Rams? He's going to get promoted to be the offensive coordinator for the Rams now that Mike LaFleur has gone to the Cardinals. So those are my thoughts. Quick final thing on Klint Kubiak. Anybody's worried this week that his mind is not going to be on the game, I would not worry about that. The man just oozes professionalism. He oozes almost to a point of nerdiness. Like, I am absolutely tuned in, all in, football 24/7. He seems like an absolute football addict. He's obviously grown up in the game. There is absolutely no way that Klint Kubiak is going to be spending this week watching Fernando Mendoza tape or Brock Bowers tape or calling around for staff. Like, he's going to be 100% Seahawks. You better believe that. I have total confidence in that. And a year ago, Kellen Moore was in this exact same position with the Saints, called a great game. Eagles demolished the Chiefs. So I'm not worried. If the Seahawks don't win this game, or if they perform poorly on offense, it will not be because this is a distraction. I'm 100% confident about that. So anyway, on to the next topic. The Seahawks, it has been reported, will go up for sale after the Super Bowl. We knew this. Not the timing of it, but we knew the Seahawks were going to have to be sold sooner rather than later. So when I saw this news, it was like, oh, that's interesting, but not a surprise. The terms of the will, when Paul Allen passed, was that the team should be sold and the money gained from this should go towards Paul's philanthropy, charity. So that is what the plan has always been and what was always going to be. Now, I know that Vulcan have been sort of in charge and clearly are doing a good job, doing a very good job. Should not dab them with faint praise. Done a fantastic job. They've nailed the appointment of Mike Macdonald. They were right to move on from Pete Carroll. They were right to back John Schneider. They've backed Schneider and Macdonald with big money contracts and free agent sign-ins and invested faith in them. They've done an unbelievable job. But it was always going to be the case that the team was going to have to be sold sooner rather than later. And once the terms had passed, that meant that the city would get, I think, 10% of any sale if it happened in a certain time frame, the countdown was always on, despite any denials for the team to be sold. It was just a matter of when, not if. I am not having that Robert Kraft has leaked this. I just, I'm not having that, I'm afraid. It's not for me. I tell you what I think this is. This is the Seahawks have got to the Super Bowl. Some journalists have been sat on this for probably a fair bit of time. And the Seahawks getting to the Super Bowl has made them think, now's the time to really press on with this story. Nail it down, get all the information that we need, and report it to kick off the start of the Super Bowl media week. That is what I think has happened. So I think this has probably been spoken about by people in the game to journalists for some time. And they have decided now's the time to get this out into the public domain. And it's the perfect time. It's a Super Bowl. The Seahawks are playing. You know, if you want to get most eyes on your story, this is, of course, the time that you would put this out. You wouldn't wait 3 weeks. You wouldn't wait 4 months. You'd do it now. So I'm convinced that's it. I don't think people need to sort of worry about who's leaked this. And this is probably just something that good journalists have been working on for some time. And we all knew it was going to happen eventually. So now, do I think the league has been perhaps involved in some of this sourcing of this story? Perhaps. The chances are there is at least one very wealthy owner, prospective owner, who is pushing Roger Goodell and the NFL to join the club, to be part of the elite 32 multi-billionaires who own NFL teams. And I imagine that they've been knocking on that door for some time, knowing that the Seahawks are probably going to hit the market soon, wanting to know when they're going to get their chance. And I think the Seahawks, knowing what was said in the will, are probably giving the Seahawks the nudge that the Wall Street Journal has reported that the league has been, to please put down a time frame for this to happen now, because it has to happen eventually. I think that's what this is. Why would a multi-billionaire be pressing for this? Because multi-billionaires do not stay multi-billionaires by throwing money away. And they know that the price of sports teams, whether it is in the NHL, the NBA, or the NFL, is rising. And I don't think they want to wait any longer to spend money on an NFL team when I think the Commanders went for $6 billion, and the Seahawks might go for 8, 9, or even 10 billion. And if the price is just going to go up and up and up, they'll want to do the bid now before it goes up anymore, because the price is not getting any higher as revenue grows. So they will be pushing for the NFL to do something here. And that's why I think this is happening. I think it's why it's coming to the fore. I think there's a bit of pressure from the NFL. And I don't know if this is going to take as long as people think once it actually goes on the market, because I think there will be people ready to go. And, sales take a long time, whatever. I've been trying to sell a house for some time, and it takes a bloody long time sometimes. Same with the NFL franchise. So it will take a certain amount of time, but I do think that people will be ready to go. And you can probably guess who that would be. Everyone can connect the dots a little bit. Could it be Steve Ballmer? Could it be Jeff Bezos? There's candidates who could be there. I appreciate that it could cause some anxiety as to who does eventually buy the team. But if you look at the last 2 teams that were bought, the Commanders and the Broncos, Josh Harris has not been a controversial figure at all, replacing Dan Snyder. And Walton Penner with the Broncos have been pretty steady away. Like they made the mistake quite early on of investing a massive new contract in Russell Wilson, only to tear that up and waste themselves a lot of money. But to them, that's not that much money, is it really, given how much they're worth? And they seem to be running a stable franchise. So I think that the NFL appreciates that, the Haslam Haslam's at Cleveland, not a great look. David Tepper throwing drinks and being a bit crazy at times in his decision making in Carolina is not a good look. I think they've made sure that the next two have been sold to people who are capable of running a team properly. I think that they will do the same with the Seahawks. I don't think you are going to. Maybe this is blind faith on my behalf. I think that there's a decent chance that the Seahawks are going to be sold to the right person or people, and that people are not going to have to worry too much. And they are inheriting a very good infrastructure with a good GM and a good head coach. They don't need to change too much. It could be a good thing for the Seahawks. So I'm just, all I wanted to say to finish is that I'm pretty relaxed about it. I know that some people might not be, and they'd rather sort of the status quo continue. I think Vulcan and Jody Allen and Burt Cole have done an unbelievable job and deserve an immense amount of respect and credit. But it was always going to be sold eventually. That's in the will, that it has to be sold. It wasn't there for Vulcan to just carry on running it forever. So it's going to happen eventually, and it seems like it's going to happen sooner rather than later. Wanted to finish with a bit about the game before I get into the super chats. I've heard a lot this week about the Patriots defense. Oh, it's an amazing defense, and it's gone to the next level in the playoffs, and what a defense this is. Listen, the Patriots are a good team, and you're not going to hear from me saying anything about negative about the Patriots. I'm not going to do that in terms of actually like criticizing aspects of their team. But I do think I need to push back a little bit on this gushing praise. People are going a bit over the top to praise the Pats defense. For example, you've got a situation where people are saying they've only given up 9 points per game and stuff like that on defense in the playoffs. Let's have a look at who they've played. Justin Herbert, who is about 50% healthy and had a hand injury, with a banged up offensive line, missing their two best offensive linemen, just getting whipped on the line down after down after down. They had no chance in the trenches in that game. And unsurprisingly, they won it comfortably. CJ Stroud threw the game away. It was one of the worst quarterbacking performances I've ever seen in the divisional round. It was a mess. And if he'd have just played the percentages and just had an okay game in that game, I think the Texans would have won with the way that they were playing on defense. They lost the game because CJ Stroud was awful. And then the final game, the Pats got to play Jarrett Stidham, the backup quarterback for the Broncos, and then had the benefit of a snowstorm when they had a 3-point lead. To me, I can't take much out of that in terms of the Pats defense. Again, they've got some very good players, including Milton Williams, who we interviewed many years ago because he was a red-hot blog favorite. They've got Barmore, they've got Gonzalez. Their linebackers, if healthy, are pretty good. They can create pressure in creative ways. But can we just, we don't have to overreact a little bit here. The defense for the Pats is a very well-coached unit. But I think people have gone a little bit too far on that. The keys to this game for me are simple, and this is going to sound pretty boring and cliched. Who wins the turnover battle? Who wins in the trenches? Who does a better job controlling the controllables? If the Seahawks don't turn the ball over and they can make their plays on offense, they're going to win this game perhaps handily. If they turn the ball over a lot, if the Pats force mistakes, if they steal possessions off Seattle and they get ahead in the game, it could be a different story. Who's going to win the offensive line battle? Can the Pats protect Drake May? That's been an issue for them at times. Can the Seahawks protect Sam Darnold? It's been an issue for the Seahawks at times on the interior. Anthony Bradford's got to have a big game, for example. And then the defensive lines, who's going to have the biggest impact? Is it going to be Barmore and Milton Williams? Is it going to be Leonard Williams blowing things up from the interior with help from Byron Murphy and Jaron Reed? Is DeMarcus Lawrence going to be able to produce one of those big sacks or a turnover, a sack fumble? Can Chenna Nwosu have the game I've been waiting a few weeks for him to have now and get a big sack and get a big pressure? He's been quiet for a while. I even wonder a little bit. I was watching back the Pats Seahawks game from last season. Boya Mafe had a couple of big moments in that game. Boya Mafe's had a very quiet season. Could he be an unlikely hero on defense? Could his speed rush cause the Pats some problems getting off the edge? Maybe in this game. It's the last game before he has a contract situation in free agency. Maybe you can. Maybe you can go and have an impact there. Or maybe, and this is something I would consider, use Nick Warriors and edge rushers sometimes, just go for pure speed. Like, just chuck him in there for a couple of downs, just see if he can get after the quarterback. I just love to see a bit of creativity with that because he's got so much speed and power. Just see if he can sneak one out there on third down. See if he can get after Drake May. So I think that really is, it's quite simple. It's the turnover battle. It's the trenches. It's controlling the situations that you can control. And by that, from the Seahawks' point of view, making sensible situational football decisions. I think that's dogged a lot of teams in the playoffs. Hasn't dogged Seattle so far. Got to continue with that. The other X factor for me from a Patriots point of view is their coaching staff. Mike Vrabel's an unbelievable coach. Josh McDaniels is a very good offensive coordinator, even if he's a terrible head coach. And something that I find really interesting is what Mike Vrabel said last week, is that he likes to work out how many points they're going to need game to game. He is going to know a number in his head of what he thinks he needs to beat the Seahawks. I can't imagine he doesn't think that number's not high, given what he's seen over the last few weeks. If he feels like he's got to score a lot of points in this game, he's going to be aggressive. He might be going for it on fourth down on his own 40-yard line. You've got to win those downs, Seattle. You've got to force the turnovers. You've got to make them pay for their aggression. They will definitely go for it. I don't think they're going to be kicking many field goals in this game, the Patriots. Unless it's that kind of a game where it's nip and tuck and it's tight and they adapt situationally, which the good coaches can do. I think he's going to be aggressive otherwise, and he's going to try and score touchdowns because I think he's going to feel like he needs to get 7 points on most drives. So I think he's going to be aggressive, and you've got to win those aggressive downs when they come. The other thing is, I think he's going to try and steal either a possession if he can't turn the ball over. I think they'll have a trick play up their sleeve. I think something crafty could happen here. You've got to defend that. And I keep coming back in my own mind to how the Patriots lost the Super Bowl to Philadelphia a few years ago with things like the Philly special. I think the Pats will have moments like that, feeling like they need to catch Seattle out to get an extra 7 points or to get 7 instead of 3. I think that they will, I think they're going to be trying to trick things here. So you've got to be wary of that. And I think you've got to try and control this game. Do not let the Patriots with their aggression and their funky stuff dictate the tempo and the flow of this game. Stay ahead, stay in control. When you take a punch like you did against the Rams, maybe go behind in the game for the first time, come roaring back, get your own touchdown. If they can do all of those things, the Seahawks can have a very good chance to win this game. And then there's obviously Drake May. I don't think the Seahawks have played anybody like Drake May this season, and I'm wary that when they've played Josh Allen last year, it was a struggle for them. His mobility and playmaking can be an X factor. You have got to find a way to contain him in the pocket while still rushing. If you're too aggressive, he might peel out and then run with his legs. Everyone's got to fly to the quarterback if he breaks the plane and then gets through and gets over the line of scrimmage and starts setting off, because he can be a killer. I mean, look at the final play against Denver, running for that first down. You've got to be wary of his mobility. So he's going to be somebody that you need to watch out for. Pats are a really good team. Pats are not in the Super Bowl by fluke. They deserve to be there. But the Seahawks are such a complete team, loaded roster, playing very well on all three sides of the ball. Great coaches on all sides, coaching those units. They've just got to go out there and deliver the kind of game they've been delivering for the last few weeks, where since that Tampa Bay game, the only team that's really given them serious heart palpitations are the Rams. Handle your business and they'll be fine. Right, last few super chats, and then I'm going to call it a night. This one from Albert. Dan Vines told me to give you a shout out at the Senior Bowl. Well, thank you, Albert. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And great to see you got the T-shirt on there. And I hope you enjoy the Senior Bowl. I should have probably done some thoughts on the Senior Bowl because there's a big article on Senior Bowl. I just put it out. So go and have a look at that on the blog, because it took a long time to put together. The players that I thought performed very well at the Senior Bowl, some of the more overrated players. There's lots of information on there. So SeahawksDraftBlog.com for that. Milkshake Man says, do you feel comfortable paying K9 $10 to $15 million a year, or do you think the better strategy is to draft a running back to start next season? I'm not comfortable paying him $15 million a year. I'm open-minded about doing a deal for 10 because I think he has played well, and I think Charbonnet's injury has created a bit of an issue there at running back. But if you're talking about more than 10, I'd say franchise him and keep him one more year and then just play it by ear in that regard. I don't think he's a $15 million a year player for sure. But let's see. If he wins the Super Bowl MVP, I reserve the right to change my mind. Level Skip says, other than May, nobody on the Patriots offense scares me much. Keep Donald clean. I think Seattle wins. Thank you, Level Skip, for that. Jan says, enjoy every minute in Santa Clara. You really deserve the experience after all of your hard work for the Seahawks community. Here are a few beers. Thank you, Jan. I really appreciate that. You've also given me an opportunity to thank Brian again, Brian Nemhauser at Hawk Blogger, for offering me the chance to buy the ticket and be able to book this trip out there. I'm very much looking forward to going out. It is not cheap, but it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing, and I just can't wait to get out there on Friday. It's a long flight. It's like 11 hours flight to head out there, and my plan is to get there about 3 o'clock, get to the hotel, get checked in. I have no idea what I'm going to do on Friday. I don't know if there's much to do in Santa Clara on a Friday night. I'm guessing there is because it's California and it's Friday night. But then on Saturday, I want to get up quite. Please email me if you've got any better suggestions here. My plan is to try to get out, go and see the Golden Gate Bridge quite early. I think I'm going to do that because I feel like I'm that close to San Francisco. I should go and see the main landmark. Maybe go into downtown San Francisco and then keep the evening free, because you never know what's going to happen in the Saturday evening, the night before the Super Bowl. So hopefully there's going to be some fun things to do there. And then, of course, the game. And then I'll be flying back on Monday, and I'll let you know as in terms of streams and stuff like that. I'm determined to do some streams while I'm out there. Definitely will put some videos up if I can't stream. It depends on the Wi-Fi, but I will definitely do some videos. So subscribe. I'll take some footage of my trip and I'll post it up and stuff like that. And if there's any cool stuff that I'm able to do out there, if I can do anything for the channel or for the blog, I will take that opportunity. But yeah, just a big thank you to Brian for helping me get out there. It's massively appreciated, and I hope I can think of a way to pay him back, because I really appreciate it. And great to be there with Jeff as well, by the way. I'm going to be sat next to Jeff and can't wait to meet Jeff in person and watch this game together, and hopefully sharing a beer afterwards maybe and celebrating. And Jason says, hi, Rob. Here's a little thank you for all the amazing content. I hope it helps a bit towards your Super Bowl trip. Jason, I massively appreciate that. Thank you very much. It's a very generous super chat. And yes, it definitely does help towards the trip, because like I say, it's not cheap to go to a Super Bowl, but yeah, it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing. So very much looking forward to getting out there on Friday. Right, a reminder, tomorrow, Tuesday, Bump and Stacey. I think it's midday when it goes out on the radio, but the YouTube interview that I do with Bump and Stacey every week, they'll be on there on YouTube. I will post that on the blog, and it'll be on the Seattle Sports YouTube channel as well. If you want to catch it on there, please do watch those things. It really helps if you can watch those and like them and leave a comment. That really helps. And then the Seahawks Collective, I think it might be an hour later. So 2 o'clock my time and 6 p.m. Seattle time tomorrow, because the rest of the team are at Radio Row. So I think we're going to do it a little bit later, but stay tuned for information on the timing for that. But we'll be talking about the Super Bowl. They're all out there. I'm on the other side of the world, but I will be out there later in the week. And then Puck Sports on Wednesday. Very much looking forward to talking to Puck about the Super Bowl on Wednesday as well. So check that out. I'll put that video on the blog too. Trying to think what else there is. I'm going to try and get on and do something as well. Maybe Wednesday, Thursday. We will see on timings. But I want to do as much as I possibly can this week for you guys, because who knows when we're going to be talking about a Super Bowl ever again. So really appreciate everybody for watching tonight. Listen Live numbers are good. Do me a favor, subscribe if you haven't already. Subscriber numbers are going up, but they tend to go really slowly. So if we could bump them up, if we could get over 12,000 before the Super Bowl, maybe even move it up towards 30. 12,000 would be good for me. 12 for the Super Bowl would be perfectly fine. But if we get up towards 13 as well, even better. And if you could like the video and leave a comment, and when I finish the stream, get onto your phones and your tablets and go onto the app and press the hype button so it gets more eyes on it. Just seeing this super chat come in. It's a massively generous one as well from IAB230. Want to help out too, Rob. Love your content. I live in the Bay. Sounds like you'll be in my neck of the woods. Fingers crossed it's a celebratory trip. Go Hawks, go 12s. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much for that extremely generous super chat. It genuinely... I can't believe it, frankly. I can't believe that I'm going to the Super Bowl. I can't believe there are people who care what someone in Rotherham thinks about the Seahawks. I genuinely just, I'm so appreciative. And I know how lucky I am. And I know that I'm getting to do something this week that a lot of other people would love to do, and I'm very conscious of that. And I want you all to know how much I realize how lucky I am, and that I hope that whatever I can get out there will help sort of bring this moment to life in a small way if it can. And I am confident the Seahawks are going to do the job. So let's get out there. Let's go and see a Super Bowl win. Let's celebrate for the next few days afterwards. And let's be happy about what's going to happen this weekend. Right, that's as far as we go for today. I will see you all soon. Don't forget to subscribe. Go Seahawks. Big Super Bowl week. Until next time, bye for now.